Hey, this is Blake Bettner with Worn Wound. Today, we're talking about travel watches. I'm joined by Thomas Clark. Hey, Thomas, how are you?
Hey, what's up, Blake?
And we have a broad selection of watches in front of us some I think squarely fall into the travel watch category. Some maybe not so much, but I think we would still classify as a pretty good travel watch.
Right.
Thomas, what do you look for in a travel watch? Do you travel with multiple watches? Do you travel with one watch? It's got to be your do-everything watch. Where do you come down on here?
You know what? When I think of travel, my mind immediately goes to a GMT function. So
Sure.
a second hand, rotating 24-hour bezel, like the GMT Master 2 that we have here on the table. I just think about the GMT function. I think about kind of what that second hand kind of represents as far as like traveling to a different time zone. And
Right. So traditionally here, you would have that second 24-hour hand always set to your home time,
Right.
and then you quickly adjust the hour hand to your local time. So you mentioned something interesting there, rotating bezel. So we have a GMT here with rotating bezel and a GMT here without a rotating bezel. How important is that to you? That kind of adds in like maybe a third time zone that you can use. I guess people use it for a variety of different ways.
yeah, I think from a practical standpoint, you know, me personally, I don't use the bezel for the third time zone.
Yeah.
I just think for me, I'm always just keeping track of another time zone, and that's pretty much it. And I think it just depends on like what you're doing and what's the purpose of your travel.
Yeah.
But again, just my mind, when I do think of travel watches, it goes to the quintessential GMT hand and the 24-hour bezel.
The bicolor bezel,
Right, yeah,
something along those lines.
yeah. I think we've kind of been kind of massaged to
Right.
think that, right?
But those aren't the only watches that make for pretty good travel watches.
No,
We
they
have
don't.
Kind of a selection here. One thing that we don't have is like a world timer. I think for our purposes, that's maybe not something that you and I would consider like a practical on-the-go travel watch as
Right.
much as maybe some of these.
Right.
So we've got a couple of maybe unexpected choices here. And one thing that I want to touch on is a 12-hour bezel.
What we have here is the Oris Caliber 400 with the 12-hour bezel.
The newest Diver 65.
Exactly. Yeah, and I just think in general, I think this is a simple format for a watch to travel with. I mean, just in a way, I think you can make the argument that it's easier than having a watch that has a GMT function, because you don't have to manipulate the crown to adjust the time, and it's just a turn of a bezel kind of will just get you to the point where you can just kind of know the time as far as like what other time you're tracking.
Yeah, my take here is, would you still pull a crown out, adjust the hour hand to wherever you are, and then rotate the bezel to your home time, and then you keep track of like how far behind your current time zone your home time is. I know a few people use these in maybe different ways. I like that it kind of gives you the option to use it how you would like, or whatever's easiest for you. But yeah, you certainly don't need the fourth hand there to keep track of it if you don't want to.
Right. Yeah, usually with this, I typically go 3 hours away from the hour hand. So before, when I was living on the West Coast and just doing work there and trying to keep up with you guys here at the office, I would kind of rotate it 3 hours away.
3 hours behind.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and kind of keep track that way.
So another watch that we have here that I think is interesting that we've commented on before, and we maybe like to see more of, is a watch that has a jumping hour hand. The hour will just jump one by one. So the minute hand stays in the same place, and the hour hand will move, which I think is kind of nifty here. And obviously you're not getting a second time zone, but it allows you to quickly adjust on the fly, on the move, like while you're traveling, which I think is kind of nice. I know Omega has some of this in their calibers with dates, which is kind of cool. What do you think of this? Would this be a useful, or is it like, well, just something like the Explorer here, which I think might also be a good travel watch just because there's no date, there's no complication to mess with. So you're literally just pulling the crown out and adjusting the time to your local time.
Right.
You know, you're not saving that much time, but it's nice that you don't have to kind of like realign the minutes hand and hack the seconds hand on top there. You know, so this has like kind of an ease of use to it that I find really attractive.
I think it's a step past the 12-hour bezel, but like it's less work than when you're dealing with a watch that has a second GMT hand. And I also, as far as like a jumping hour hand, I do like the and again, this doesn't have it, but a push button that allows a the hour hand to jump.
Yeah.
I think that just makes it easier than just kind of pulling out the crown and kind of turning it.
That would be pretty trick here, having
Right.
a button that would advance the
Right.
hour hand. And of course, a watch that we don't have with us that does something similar, that is more of a world timer, is from Nomos. So they have a watch that with a world timer ring around the edge. The push of a button will advance time zones, and the hour hand will adjust with it.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So, but you certainly don't need that much there. Even just
No.
having the button to advance the hand, I think is still pretty cool.
There aren't a lot of options for that right now, and that's definitely something I would like to see.
One watch that is a little bit more straightforward here is this Glycine Airman, and this is a 24-hour watch. So this has a friction fit bezel with a locking mechanism down here and just a single hour hand that tells time on a 24-hour scale, which is kind of interesting. You don't really see things like this
No,
these days.
you don't.
Would you find this as practical as any of the other solutions here?
Maybe not as much, but like I said, I would probably, as far as like practicality goes, like I would go with something like the Ming here, where it's just kind of easy, simple. You don't have to worry about an additional hand or the locking mechanism for
the locking mechanism, sure.
Yeah. So,
but it's certainly unique. Right?
It definitely is. It definitely is, and it's kind of one of those things where if you do have it at your desk, it's kind of like what it represents, more so than like actually bringing it for travel. Yeah.
So you mentioned ease of use here, and I think one watch here reigns supreme in that realm, and it is this Anti-Digi Aqualand, which offers you, of course, more functionality than any of these mechanical watches here. So with a literal press of the button, you can kind of scroll through and adjust.
Exactly. And I just press the, I believe it's the mode button there, or no, the set button there, and and it's adjusted to Pacific Standard Time. So and again, it's just a fun way to kind of track a second time zone. And like you said, it just has all the different functions there.
And it's easy, right?
It is. It is very easy.
So and it's of course has this depth gauge
slash can opener.
Can opener, beer opener. So you can be in the middle of your dive, and if you're wondering what time is it back home, you can press the button and you can get there. This watch is so interesting, and of course plenty of Anti-Digi watches offer this similar functionality.
Now, not something that would stay under the radar.
Definitely not.
That's
okay.
Which brings me to my next point, just about travel in general. If I think when you're traveling, you do want a watch that kind of like handles all your bases, right? So something that on vacation or when you're traveling, typically during the day, you're doing something active, or you're just hanging out by the pool, but you might be going to a business dinner or just a dinner in general, and you want something that's just gonna kind of fit in. And I think that's where the Explorer or something similar, where you have a decent amount of water resistance, and again, like you said, to your point, there's no date here, so it's just a matter of just adjusting your time and then letting it do its thing.
This is great if you don't need to stress about what time it is back home.
Exactly.
I think if you're traveling, from coast to coast or something, like that's one thing. If you're traveling to a country that you don't find yourself in very often, like Switzerland or France, then it's maybe a little harder to do the math quickly in your head. At least for the likes of me. But I think that there's certain kind of like ease of use charm to this. So your perfect travel watch. Is it somewhere in between these? Is it on the table here? Or what are you taking?
And again, usually when I do travel, I do typically go with a dive watch. And again, this is something I do want to add to the collection at some point, but a dive watch with a GMT function would, that would be kind of the kind of go-to perfect travel watch for me. But ideally, I do go with something that's simple like the Explorer, and for me, it's the 14270. And if not that, then it's just a simple diver.
It's basically a dive watch without the bezel.
Exactly.
So it's fine. So I find myself, the ease of use when I land is not a huge concern of mine. When I travel, when I land, it's not like I'm immediately being ushered off the plane into something that I need to do. It's usually a bit of taxiing involved and this and that. So, I don't mind taking the time, and it's kind of fun. So I enjoy traveling in these two watches specifically here to kind of take the time when you land to make the adjustment, and then there's something like satisfying about looking at it and seeing the the home time.
Yeah.
So there's kind of a charm there that I really enjoy.
Yeah.
So it's probably like kind of where I would land using one of these watches. There's not a whole lot of effort that goes into to making this work on any of these watches. Probably this glycine is the one that would require the most fiddling around with that bezel adjustment, but it's also the most unique here.
It really is. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But where are you falling on this? How do you travel with watches? How do you like to use travel watches? Does it have to be a GMT? Is it just a normal time only hand? What do travel watches mean to you? Let us know down in the comments below. And if you enjoy this content, please be sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. It helps us out a lot. And until next time, take care.
See you.